The views, information or opinions expressed during the Journey podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved and does not represent Wise Words Imaging or any other company. Wise Words Imaging is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy. Any of the information contained in the podcast series is available from the respective owner. Enjoy the show.
He's a university academic and animator from Rugby. It's Professor Tim Wilson's Journey, hosted by David Hackett.
Start it now. You can always edit the inappropriate stuff out. But
no, we can keep that. That's what makes it natural.
It's what makes it priceless. There we are. No, I used to do a lot of recordings for teaching people English as a foreign language. And here's Bay.
Hello, Bay.
Here's the he's not been very well, so I thought he was seriously ill today, but in fact he's done all he needs to do, so I'm now much happier with him. But I was very worried this morning.
Hello, Bay.
Yeah, he's oh yeah, there we are. He's the one who's I hope he's the one who's allowed fame to go to his head. So every time I switch on a camera, he turns up. Every time I put on the television, he sits in front of it.
Well, he's so used to the cameras now because
he's
of your.
So used to the cameras, and he's always had an ability to know when someone is watching him. And I don't know whether that's a cat thing. I in my mind, and I've certainly said things about this to other people, but I think it's sort of fantasy, really, and sort of gobbledygook. But in my mind, I think cats have some sort of intimation of the future, and they have a sort of sixth sense.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether it's really realistic. Bay definitely knows whenever a camera's coming out, he's there. And he can be quite difficult actually in front of a camera now. He's got the makings of Elizabeth Taylor. Anyway, what are we talking about? Tell me.
Anything you want.
Oh God, no! The sky's the limit, and I would just go on and on and on, and I'll never end. And and
I'll make the podcast and the story to it. No, seriously, we're here today.
So tell me about you for a moment. So you're in the States, but you come from here, don't you?
Yeah, I come from England. I come from Cornwall originally.
Cornwall, whereabouts?
In a little town called Camborne, which is a old tin mine town.
Absolutely. So it's one of those really old towns which goes back to pre-Roman, I think.
I believe so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
What annoys me the most is people spell it with a U sometimes, which is Camborne in Cambridgeshire, not Camborne in Cornwall.
Yes, absolutely. It's but it's okay. It's okay. Spelling didn't get rationalized until the 18th century, so it's a new thing. It's a new thing, and
it's one. If you're Cornish, it's one of Cornwall's biggest bugbears. If you say Camborne with a U.
All right, really.
Yeah.
Well,
and another bugbear. Never go with someone from the next town on because it'd be considered wrong in so many levels.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! No, I have no. And where did you move to in the States?
I'm in Ohio, and I'm in a town called East Liverpool.
Oh my goodness! But when now I want to say why oh. Do you know this?
Yes.
Why did I ever go to? Oh, why did I ever leave Ohio? It's from a Bernstein musical called Wonderful Town.
Yes.
And he wrote three musicals almost at the same time. And Sondheim was originally writing words for him and ended up writing music as well for some of them, particularly West Side Story. He did some of the tunes. And a great set of, probably the greatest set of that lot to come out of that period was Candide, which is a wonderful piece, but a really messed up book. So it's very difficult to find a production which really works. There was one up in Scottish National Opera which worked very well, and I knew somebody who was in it, so I'm quite partial to that version.
That's good.
Yeah.
So East Liverpool's paired with Stoke-on-Trent.
Oh my goodness, Stoke-on-Trent. There we are. Well, I know all about Trent, and I was at school near Leicester, and so I was born in Derby, so it's sort of going into my area.
Yeah. So, and a bit more about me. I'm a podcaster. I'm a vlogger on YouTube. I'm not a catfish like some people have been in life.
Oh, believe me, I'm. Yeah, I think people sometimes misunderstand about catfish. They think, well, they must understand about me and catfish. They think I'm very opposed to catfish.
Which I know you're not.
I'm really not. I admire what catfish do. I don't really want to catch them up because I already know. So at the moment, I'm putting out quite a lot of YouTube videos about Russian politics, which is a bit dangerous, and I'm being trolled at an immodest rate. And what's extraordinary is these people put on their messages, and then somehow the whole system collapses. And I don't know whether this is a result of Virgin Media. I want to blame Virgin Media whenever I can, but you don't have this privilege out there in Ohio, but I do. So Virgin Media down, but they've already done that for me. I mean, their output of signal is so down, it's ridiculous, and I pay for extra, and I can barely get a signal sometimes. We're lucky today, but weekends, I've decided I'm never going to podcast at weekends. But yes, what happens is you answer one of these really aggressive points, and then by the time you put it up, they've changed what they've said.
Yeah, totally. I understand that so much.
And you think, I've just addressed your points. You've changed your points, and it doesn't even say edited next to it.
No. And
I don't understand. How they managed to get through that. And there's one who's been particularly clingy, and in a bad way, and writing whole paragraphs, and I've been answering them, and it's a very masculine form of writing. And when I sort of pushed, they said, "Oh, you think I'm Russian?" No, I'm, and indicated that they were a woman. Just complete rubbish. I've been teaching for so long, and I know when I've got a masculine text in front of me. I know when I've got a feminine text in front of me. There's something about gender which comes across in the writing. Yeah. Now, what's lovely is when you get real writers, that becomes irrelevant, and you cannot tell. But you certainly can tell with a lot of people who are writing rubbish on YouTube. They're just not experienced enough to sort of get into the mind of another person, or certainly another gender. I think if I were to catfish in a program like The Circle, I would be very cautious about catfishing as a woman, because it's the quality of speech which changes. And that's very difficult to do. J.K. Rowling, for example, has never done it in all her books. All her books, all the dialogue sounds the same. Just occasionally when she talks, when she gives something for Ron to write, she says "bloody hell," in it, and it means nothing. It means nothing. In contrast, when you get somebody, one of the greats like Dickens can write with different rhythms, and he can write in different voices and different genders, and it's believable. I don't know whether it's believable anymore because you've got sort of history in the way as well now, but I feel that there's believability there. Jane Austen, I think, can't, poor dear. But you don't look to Jane Austen for the brilliant dialogue. You look to Jane Austen for the catty interjections after the dialogue finishes.
Well, with the Bronte sisters, you could tell that was a definite feminine side, couldn't you?
Yeah. It's and it's interesting when you're looking at film. You know, there's something about. Some writers are terribly good at inhabiting the character, and some writers just can't get it. And the same thing actually with animators. You know, ideally, one wants, you know, things like background and class, that horrible word, and gender ought to be irrelevant.
Yeah, but
they impinge on the way that our language is expressed, and I think that's got a lot to do with very, very early child rearing.
Yeah. So going back to your, we'll say this in a summary because I am offloading from what you're telling me, but I'm just talking generally.
Talk generally.
The circle. If you wasn't yourself, do you think you would have catfished?
Oh no. You don't get very much choice, really. So you're given permission not to catfish, I think, is the best way of describing that experience.
Because I know from your quote, you said, your quote, I think you said you wanted to go in there and learn a bit more about social media.
I didn't. No, that was what they pressed me to say, I think. I had no interest in social media. None at all. I didn't really know what it was, so I would never have said that willingly. I think they had me talking about emojis and things. I still don't really know what an emoji is, and I don't care. You know, I can do the smiley face. That is good enough for me. Occasionally I get the smiley face wrong. It looks miserable, or it looks if it's got its tongue stuck up. But, you know, I really don't know. I just think, you know, if they want me to draw, I will draw. I'm not going to be dependent on somebody else's sort of cheap grimacing. If you want a character that gurns at you, I'll produce it. I'll draw it. But I'm not interested in emojis. And as for the aubergine, it took me a while to work out what that was. Metaphors have never been my strong point. I am rather literal. Just think, why are we looking at a vegetable?
or the other example is what?
Not even a terribly happy vegetable. Sorry.
And the other example, a peach.
Yeah, I've never worked that one out, but somebody did sort of explain.
But the point is, peach, aubergine, what's it?
Yeah. Somebody did explain that. And
this is what I like about this podcast. We are leaving it open-minded, so we can talk about anything.
Well, I'm no idea. You know, just emojis just seem. They seem sort of entertainment for dull people, and I think one could be more interesting. Did I become an emoji? Have I become an emoji?
No, you became
a GIF.
You became a GIF, and you became a meme.
Yes, I don't know how to use a GIF or a meme, so I've never managed to use myself. But. And that's like a reference to Genesis 38. But we don't go there. Onan the Barbarian. No. But it's where were we? Sorry. So yes. You go. There were 16 of us in the circle. So 16 of us got on air anyway. I think there were some others who were kept in seclusion and never saw the light of day. And I have no idea who they are. And I feel rather sorry for them because, they put in all that effort and they spent a month in captivity and they got nothing out of it except for 75 quid per day for inconvenience. They weren't even paid, nor were we by that matter. We weren't paid. You get a token sort of expenses. That's it. And I think it's wrong, and I've been quite vocal about that. I think I think this is the wrong approach to reality TV, and I have friends in the reality TV community now, because I knew nothing about reality TV before I did the circle, and now I'm sort of bang in the heart of it all. And they say, "Oh no! Those shows which have paid people, they've produced worse shows because you need the prize as a sort of as a stimulus to perform." I don't think that's true. Number one, it's like you need the whip in order to get lions to perform in a cage in a circus. We may not approve of caged lions in a circus. I don't think I do, but I have seen them in Moscow without a whip, and they just look like happy pussycats. And I think, okay, that's fine. It is there are ways, and certainly in films, when you're looking at animal wranglers, they don't use a whip. You don't need a whip. You just need to provide the right sort of impetus, and I think this idea of greed is not something attractive. And new adverts have come out which suggest that everybody's interested in this cash prize. I wasn't. I was never interested in the cash prize. It wasn't even presented to me as a reason for doing it. Now, I say there's 16 people in my series, and I know with my hand on my heart that only one of those applied to be in the show. And it wasn't me, so I wouldn't have known what the show was. We were tapped on the shoulder. We were telephoned. I was telephoned while I was in Cambridge. It was a very wet, miserable day. I was teaching. I don't know if you know Cambridge, but wet Cambridge is worse than the worst weather in Cornwall, I'm sure. It's flat, miserable and dark. And frankly, at that moment, you would do anything. And so I said yes. I had no idea what I was saying yes for, but I knew I had a month free. At the end of the month, I had to do a conference in St. Petersburg. And as a sort of, I do remember having a slightly whimsical conversation with an academic there and saying, there is a possibility I will be stuck on a television program and won't be able to make it, but I think the likelihood is I will be there. And if I won't be there, I'll be able to communicate by some sort of remote Zoom or something. And as it was, I'm pleased I had that conversation, because as it was, I was stuck in the show and I couldn't do that conference. And it was with Noam Chomsky. I'm slightly sorry in a way, but I simply didn't think my chances were very high of staying in. And they asked me if I would pretend to be someone else, and I thought, well, what's the point of being on television if you're pretending to be somebody else? And I thought, well, actually, you've got two audiences. You've got the audience, the television audience, which will always see me. And then you've got the audience in the show who will see whoever I pretend to be. And I thought, okay, I'll dissect a politician. And the one who was most readily available was Mrs. May. And she'd just ended our country. And I thought, it would be interesting and funny to play her. And the show thought that was okay. And then I went out shopping to see if I could find some kitten heels. Apparently she likes these. And I got into such a mess, and I realized I just know nothing about this. And we get back to what we were talking about at the beginning. In order to be a different gender, I mean, it's such a defining part of ourselves. It's very difficult to transition to another gender. And those people who do it who do it medically, it takes a long time. And I'm trying to do this for a joke. No, it's just not. It's not credible. And the production, I think, had done more research, and they decided that I had all these layers of personality, and they thought that would be interesting on its own. And I thought, thank God. And then I revealed more and more, and they thought, this is just improbable. And I thought, yeah, well, if you want me to play myself, that's not going to be very believable. So that became, I think, my byline. But you've probably got more of you've got an advantage over me because I haven't seen much of the show.
Yeah, I know. I saw a lot of the first series because obviously I was still in England. Well, yeah, I was still in England when that happened.
Were you? Right.
Yeah. Right. So my perception and awareness of it was in London, and obviously the second season and thereafter it's been in Manchester.
Absolutely.
So the difference there is obviously, and this is what gets me when I saw the American one, they made America in Manchester.
Absolutely. The American one was filmed just before we filmed ours.
Yeah.
And I've had lovely conversations with some of the people from the American show. It's very different to the British show, and or at least it was. I think the next series, certainly judging by the adverts, looks if it's going to go in a much more American direction. It's going to be much more like Survivor.
Yeah.
What would you do to win? I can't remember what the Survivor 3 tropes are, but I ought to know by now because I've been looking at so much of Survivor. I just don't like Jeff Probst. I find him sort of self-satisfied and sort of smug, and it's yeah.
But yeah, the way they dissected it on the American one for the first season, and I saw it on Netflix last year, and I introduced my wife to it.
Yeah,
I was thinking, that's Manchester, but why are they showing America? Because people.
It's perfectly.
But Americans didn't realise that.
Did they not?
No, they thought it was all one.
It worked. So you see, the whole program is predicated on deceit.
Yeah.
And it's not just the idea of catfishing. The whole thing is a deceit.
Yes.
I would say it goes even beyond that. The idea of reality television is a deceit. There is no reality. I could be very naughty and start sort of dishing dirt and telling you secrets at this moment. I'm not going to.
And I'll respect that.
Well, I'm not. I'm intending not to. But who knows what little hesitations and hints pop out if somebody's clever enough to read the pauses. But the thing about reality television is exactly what you've got in a really good magic show. And I've said this a few times actually, and the last time I said it, the eyes of the people who were interviewing me almost popped out of their head. I've been a teacher for so long, and one of my students, I actually cast him as Hamlet in a professional production. He was very good. He was the age Hamlet was when Shakespeare first wrote the play, and then he did a rewrite and made him older. So Hamlet was originally conceived as being 17, and there's some interesting maths towards the end of the play, which makes this very clear in the gravedigger scene. And I thought, what would happen if you cast a 17-year-old? And I surrounded him with really, really sort of strong professionals who are much older. And one of the people I cast in the show was the fellow who wrote The Inbetweeners. Anyway, the fellow who played Hamlet then went off to Bristol University, I think, or it may have been while he was at Bristol. I don't remember. And he got heavily involved in directing himself, and he's now a director in the States. And he did a big show in London and transferred to the Wyndhams, and and we did the revival together of Sondheim's Assassins. I designed it, he directed it. We got some very nice reviews. He rang me up on one occasion, said, would I come up to Bristol and design 2 shows for him? or one for him and one for one of his friends. And I thought, that's great. Yeah, of course I will. So I did, and I stayed in his flat, or his house, I think he had. And so I met a lot of his friends, and one of them was a fellow called Darren Brown. And he came round. I remember one particular evening he came round and he started doing card tricks. And I can think of nothing more boring than watching tea cool. And he said, choose a card, any card. So I said, okay, fine, yeah. Look at it, put it back in the pack. He didn't say remember. Put it back in the pack, and he does some sort of telling me that it was, that's your card. And I said, I don't remember. And I think he could have shot me at that moment. But we did sort of, it was quite exciting, and he was doing some art and bits and pieces. He's a very interesting man. And we talked a lot about the nature of magic. And essentially, I have no choice. I'm not choosing a card. He's already palmed a card off on me. And that's the card I think I'm choosing. I think I have choice. I have none. It's like God. And you choose a card, any card, you have no choice. And that, I'm afraid, is reality TV as well. Once you acknowledge that production is God, once you acknowledge that you are edited by some of the greatest people in the business, then you can just salute the team up in the gallery. That's like a Mary Lloyd song, isn't it? The boy I love is up in the gallery. There he is, can't you see? Waving out his handkerchief. And you get to know some of these people, even if you don't see them. Yeah. I got to know instinctively who was on the camera every day, operating the 8 cameras around the flat. I knew when it was a different operator because they moved differently.
Yeah.
And even if you're not looking at them, you've got them in the corner of your eye. They're like sort of spectres. They have a life of their own. And so you think you're making a choice, you're making no choice. And a really good example of this is if there's a lady called Jan, and Jan went out quite quickly. And you think, how did that happen? Well, she was the last one in. She was unlikely to win. Actually, I've done my calculation. She would have won if James had not given in to me and had forced me to vote off Ella on that occasion, because I would have then been quite determined to get him out, and I think I would have succeeded. And if I got James out, then Jan would have been one of those who was left, I think. Ella was the last one out.
Yeah.
And so if Ella had gone out before that, I think my feeling is I would have got James out rather than Jan. So therefore, Jan would have been in that final in that final lineup. I would never have voted out Georgina or Paddy.
What about Woody?
Oh, Woody was absolutely secure.
You and Woody always had that bond, didn't you?
Yeah, it was much stronger than the bond I had with Ella. I thought Ella was safe because I thought Ella had other bonds. I didn't think Woody had other bonds. That was the point. And I think I was right. I don't think he had a bond with Georgina, for example, whereas Ella did. So I didn't feel this sort of instinct to protect Ella as much as I felt to protect Woody, because I felt Woody was very much out on a limb. And I think I was right. People liked Woody, but I don't think I think James was gunning for him.
Yeah. That's the feeling I picked up on.
Yeah, but as I haven't seen those episodes, I don't know. I don't particularly want to see them because there's some stuff in them I'm told I wouldn't like, and I'm quite happy to. And to take that advice.
And I'm not trying to talk about individual episodes. I'm just talking about the general.
Yeah. But my relationship really was with production, and the relationship I had with the other performers was a secondary thing. And I was, it's very sad when suddenly the show finishes and all those relationships stop overnight, or actually the night before. And you feel completely stranded. You feel like you've been dumped.
Yeah.
And you can't express that because you're not supposed to discuss the inner workings of the show. And you're stuck in this strange world where you're talking about what everybody else has seen and you haven't seen it. And I'm very grateful. Thankfully, I became friends with most of the other people on the show that you saw, and forged some really deep bonds. And some of those, of course, were sort of created beforehand anyway. We shared an experience that is very unusual.
Yeah.
But I would like to change it. I would really like to change to ensure that in the near future there is proper regulation for people being involved in reality TV, because I think it's pernicious and I think it's potentially a sort of gladiatorial combat, and I think people are hurt. And I don't think they can express how they're hurt because when they talk to other people, the conversation automatically moves over to what people have seen on the telly, and it becomes about the edit, and that's a very minor problem. Of course, people are silly, and they say things that they shouldn't have said. There are also people who simply have never really looked at themselves and are very shocked by what they see. Robbie Burns says to see the poem about a louse, which I always think is rather charming, to see ourselves as others see us. And that's fairly startling sometimes if you haven't done that. And if you're very young, maybe that's terribly startling. Also, I think people are pegged as caricatures, really, in the production rooms. And I'm sure James was pegged as villain, and that's all he was allowed to be. Now I know that when James spoke to the production originally, he said he would do it, but as long as they didn't make him look bad. And they assured him that they wouldn't. But even with the little I've seen, the moment you see him, he's practically twirling his long moustache and sort of, he is villain.
Yeah.
And I know James, and James is the sweetest, nicest, most vulnerable, and most sort of loyal and affectionate companion. You couldn't want a nicer person. And that's not what you saw.
No.
And then this incredibly vulnerable, incredibly lovely man was getting death threats. So I don't think that's, if you're pretending to be somebody else, that's another layer of self-revelation that you can't control. You're acting, and then that's being presented as a form of reality. This is evil. I'm sorry, there is no other word for it. James is not a bad person.
It's very 1984 sounding.
It's worse than that. It's much worse than 1984, because 1984 is talking about spying on your real life. This is spying on your unreal life as well. This is spying on your fantasy life. And it's encouraging you to be a liar. And it's celebrating deceit. And I was sold on this program on something which I suppose is a lie now. I was sold on this program that it's a program about friendship. That's why it's called The Circle. And I thought, I think back to that wonderful musical Lost Horizon. That there was this wonderful. I can't remember who it was, Hedda Harper or somebody, who, one of these bitchy critics from Hollywood, who said, "Oh, a Liv Ullmann musical. We must go and see that." And and Liv Ullmann she can't hold a note, poor dear. It was originally written for Julie Andrews, and you take Julie Andrews out and you put in Liv Ullmann. My goodness, there must have been other people who could sing at that time in Hollywood. Anyway, she has this great song. The world is a circle without a beginning, and nobody knows where the circle ends. La la la. You must have heard it at some point, but it's a great, great song. And I thought, that's a circle. And that song was going around my head all the time. In fact, I think I might have even sung it at some point. And it's and it was to me it was a television show about friendship and about popularity, and the key was to make sure the circle was never broken. So I was really shocked when I met Paddy, and Paddy was sort of saying about Circle of Trust. I knew nothing about it. I had some suspicions that Georgina and Paddy were communicating. I had no idea that it was orchestrated by James. James, how could you? And they're very proud of what they did. And I just thought, no, this is so. Now, even today, if I'm pressed on this, I would say this was not what the program was about. It wasn't the program I was sold.
No.
It was, I think, partly the program that was advertised. The adverts were talking about If You Could Be Anyone, and what's the name of the girl who presented the show? Emma Willis.
Yeah,
I remember when it was quite clear I was going to be in the final. The producer who looked after me said to me, "Oh, and it's very exciting. You'll meet Emma Willis." And I said, "Who is she?" And he said, "Her husband is the lead singer in Blow or Bang or something." I thought that's very useful. I said, so you know who she is now? I said, no, she's the presenter Big Brother. Yeah. I've never seen Big Brother. I have never seen any reality TV. My partner's seen some of it, and I just despised it. I didn't even watch Strictly Come Dancing. I knew things about the people on it, but I didn't watch it. And now I've watched a lot of it because I think this is something I've missed, and this is something that defines modern culture in many ways and comments on modern culture. And I'm wrong to dismiss it. But I didn't know who this lady was, and they said, "Oh, it'll be obvious. She'll be at the end of the corridor when you walk into the studio." And I said, "But I don't know who she is. Can't you show me a photograph?" And they wouldn't. They said, "You'll recognize her when you see her." I didn't. I just thought, "Oh, that woman in the red thing, that's the one I'm talking to." Okay, fine. And I didn't know who she was from Adam. I had no idea. She was very nice. She was very nice, and we had a nice chat. And I was so relieved it was sort of fluent, and it, I would like to do more of that. The person who was an angel on the sofa was Cy, and I saw a bit of his sofa chat. Just so relaxed and so lovely, and exactly what I sort of met in the circle. And we had conversations that were never broadcast, and they were just lovely, about combine harvesters and things. And we understood each other, which is why he came to see me. But because the production decided these were too niche to be broadcast, it didn't have a leg to stand on when he was blocked and wanted to come and see me and not one of the girls. And they sort of cast him as this Lothario, and yet one of his strongest links was actually with me. And one of my strongest links was with him. I was really distraught when he went, but I couldn't see a way of keeping him. I can't remember who I was. I think it was with Georgina. I think it was with James. And I couldn't see a way of persuading the other person to keep him.
So, do you think long term, if you was in there still, do you think you would have walked, or do you think you would have lasted the old duration?
I think I probably have lasted. I think by the time you get through to a certain stage, production wants you there, and production make sure you stay. And I think production wanted me there. I think it had very little to do with me. I enjoyed doing what I was asked to do, and I think I was quite lucky in the way I voted. I have no idea even now how I kept coming top of that list in terms of popularity. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
From what I can understand, it's because you was likable, you was being you, and people seemed to understand it was you, even though you was in one room, they was upstairs.
Yeah, but you see, that's something. I mean, in terms of social experiment, it was wonderful because I could do things which I'd always been sort of harping on about. You know, I don't believe the spoken word is our form of communication. I believe it's sort of default position, and it's a weak default position. But our real communication is is subtler. You've already decided that you like somebody before you say, I like you. And the words, we tend to get the wrong words in the wrong places. It's really hard to focus the words in the right place at the right time. Words are a mess. Most of our relationships survive because we don't speak.
No comment.
And I communicate with my cats, you know, wordlessly. And certainly before they both became very, very old and ill. Now they resent me for about 4 hours after I've given them medicine. But in the past, the older one particularly would just sit and stare at my eyes, and I would see the slight change in her eyes, and she would be saying something, and I could repeat it. I could communicate back to her, and she would look relaxed and happy, and so we had sort of eye communication, and I'm convinced most human beings have that. We're just bewitched that you're doing it to me now, you see. Most human beings, I think, are bewitched by the idea that words matter. Words really don't. And they're also bewitched by the idea that truth matters. Truth does matter. But telling a good story probably matters more than truth.
Yeah.
Truth is inconvenient, and truth is messy, and you want something which is tidy, and that generally involves glossing over details, with the best will in the world, but it's still a lie, isn't it, really?
I know that. I remember, and I will use this example, and I've been told off about it. When I was first met my wife,
Ooh.
I was still in England. She was where I am now. And I made out the story that I was one of the leading people in where I did certain things. I made out I was getting paid for it. I was a
Oh my goodness, how naughty.
Yeah, I know. And she found this all out, and she was like, why did you not tell me? And I said, because I was worried you would not like me.
Yeah.
So my charade of putting on a mask and saying this is me nearly lost what I had. But the point is, I had to learn from that, and I had to grow from that.
Absolutely.
Because I couldn't.
But yeah,
because I couldn't carry on wearing that mask.
But even when you take off a more extreme form mask like that, you're still not. Truth is evasive. Truth is very difficult to find.
Yeah.
I think I've always tried. I've always thought kindness is probably more of an important quality than truth. Does my bottom look big in this? No. No, you look lovely. I'll buy you another dress tomorrow. That's kindness in action, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And you don't want Yeah, you don't want to hurt somebody.
No. But
and if you
I
can
think
persuade somebody to do something without,
it's like
children particularly, you know, when you think of children, you know, we tell children they've got to tell the truth all the time. And then December the 25th comes around and Santa comes down the chimney. Really, you know. And you look at Judi Dench, a wonderful Judi Dench movie. You sit and you enjoy that for an hour and a half, and at the end of it, the credits roll. Judy, you've been lying to me for an hour and a half. How could you do this to me, Judy? No, you don't do this. You give her an Oscar. And you know, when you look at it from that point of view, deceit is built into the way we run our lives. So catfishing is not a big. Catfishing is inconvenient, but the catfishing itself is not necessarily the bad thing. The bad thing is the nastiness behind it, and the desire to distort and to trick somebody. That's nasty. I don't believe in practical jokes, really. So I really resented being the butt of the practical joke of Richard Madeley. The cat business. I cried. I don't think the TV show showed that very much, but I cried for about a day. I was inconsolable because the cat that he insulted was my old cat, who I thought probably wouldn't survive the show. She did. She's still with us. Bizarrely, I mean, she's a determined lady. She's not necessarily a very nice lady. She's the sort of lady you probably cross the street to avoid, but she likes me. And that's really all that matters. She's now started liking my partner, which is a blessing because she's spent 17 years just sort of sneering. And now she will go and sit with him, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But
do you think the way Richard Madeley was constructed, do you think that was down to production in its own mind?
Oh God, yes. There's no way that they could have persuaded a star like Richard Madeley to be nasty on air. So they persuaded the public to vote him to be nasty, to vote him to lie, and so on. And yeah, it was sort of a game, but you know, it's a Venus bus. If you look at your Mozart and you look at you know, his opera Così fan tutte, it's just nasty. It's a nasty game, and you cannot imagine at the end of that opera that everybody goes off happy.
I can imagine it was of depression and anxiety when it did finish, because
I eventually, you know, I was sort of relieved to find that Judy didn't exist. And the problem was I was doing the blocking with Georgina, who'd had this nice conversation with Judy. And so it was really tough actually blocking her. I was determined to block her. I was determined she was going out. And a part of that was because I'd had a conversation with Woody and with Brooke. I think it was pretty well my first conversation with Woody, by the way. And production knew I was miserable. It was why they put me in the swimming pool. And I said I wouldn't go. You know, I said, do you need swimming trunks? That would never be sufficient. I'm an Edwardian. And the next morning, an Edwardian swimming costume appeared on my door. I thought, okay, fine, that's what you want. I just throw myself into this. And, you know, and it was just a fun afternoon. I think it was about to rain. I think it was probably the last time they could use the swimming pool. And I just thought it was great, you know, innuendo and, as Woody would say, in your what? And just and so I had this very nice conversation with Brooke and Georgina. And Georgina almost said nothing, and Brooke took control of the conversation, which was very unusual in those conversations. I never spoke to Brooke and Georgina alone. I only ever spoke to Brooke and Georgina as a couple, as part of the Scholar Squad thing. So that's part of this control. It's part of this magic trick. So if you want to get rid of somebody, this is what I was saying earlier, if you want to get rid of somebody, like, for example, Jan, you just make sure she doesn't speak to some of the people. So she never spoke to Paddy. She never spoke to Georgina. So why would Paddy and Georgina vote for her? They can't. So that's two votes against her. And then all she has to do is upset somebody, which would be fairly easy. You know, you're dealing with written text, and written text can be misunderstood.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't warm to a lot of the things Jan said, because a lot of them were it was banter, and I don't understand banter. I'm the wrong generation, and I mean, I understand written humour, but banter seems to me often to be predicated on jokes that people share and know, and I don't know them. It's not part of my tradition. It's not something I'm interested in. And you know, I've often, over the years, I've often had students from other countries staying with me, and they've explained what banter is, and I've just thought, how dull. And there I was in the middle of it all. How dull. And yet Jan is one of the most engaging and delightful people that I know, and she's a friend, you know, to date, and a very much, you know, very valued friend. But there was no way she was going to survive that ranking if she hadn't spoken to two of the people in the circle. How could she? Yeah. And she wasn't the only one who was in that position. You know, there are people who I didn't speak to very often. I think I only ever spoke to Josh once. I'd already decided Josh wasn't real. I mean, Baseo was saying things, and I thought, no, your photographs are an English public school boy, and you're talking in a language which is, at the very best, sort of grammar school. It's not. It's just not public schoolboy lange. I know this.
It wasn't a language that you understood to be. It was the.
Yeah. And so, you know, so I knew she wasn't real, and then the nails on the cake sort of cemented that one. So I was horrified by Paddy's attack on her, which I thought was just aggressive, and again against the spirit that I thought the circle was all about. So I knew that James wasn't real from the beginning, but I didn't want to get rid of him because I wanted to see how that character built, how that character developed. Joyce was the best, because I loved the character of Joyce, and it was clear she was fake. And I don't know how much. I haven't seen any of that stuff. I don't know how much it's edited, but if I've told you that I knew that she was fake, have a look at the conversations I'm having with her and see how much I'm egging her on, not to catch her out, but to get her to perform as best she could.
Yeah.
With Jay, I knew for about 3 days beforehand that it was his mother. And production was really frustrated because I hadn't sort of done a sort of logical analysis of this and then drawn the conclusion, because it's not how my brain works. My brain, I sort of look at something and I draw the conclusion, then I try and find the evidence to make it fit. So I'm very naughty from that point of view. And I think they think every professor is a sort of Einstein. Well, I'm not. I'm not a mathematician. I'm pretty hopeless at maths. I admire it, but I'm not good at it. I'm not a mathematician, and I'm a theologian. I'm someone who goes around the place talking about God and impossible philosophy, and you know, I'm not anchored in the nuts and bolts of going shopping and economics and stuff. I admire it. You know, John Maynard Keynes, the economist, he said when when the facts change, I change my mind. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. I learnt when I was studying theology how to hold two completely irreconcilable and incompatible ideas at the same time. And I'm really pleased I did. So I could, at the one point, on the one hand, recognize that James is fake, and on the other hand, think I really enjoy talking to this person.
So
and it had nothing to do with Charlie, by the way.
No.
Yeah.
So James was the anchor that kept the point of how you was playing the game in the way that they did.
I was really, I'm told. Again, I haven't seen it all, but and I felt it actually when I was in the show. I felt that there were these two characters. Me, I was one of them. And I was really flattered. Who wouldn't be flattered to be one of the two cowboys in the OK Corral? It's a showdown, and I felt that in the show, and I'm told that's how it played out.
Yeah.
James was one, I was the other. It's a great part to have. But it's basically EastEnders on a one take performance.
I agree.
You have a choice, don't you? As an actor, you have a choice. And I remember this really well from my time doing sort of English language cassettes in those days. And it's how I survived when I lived in Greece for quite a long time. I did all the voices for most of the English language production companies and publications. Listen and repeat. Hello, my name is George. Did you get that? all that sort of stuff. And I could do female voices as well. I had quite a range. And I loved being in front of the microphone, and I love I love that sort of thing. And now I've forgotten where I'm going. Actually, God, how awful! I suddenly had a moment of indulgence where I was reflecting on my time in these things. But you had a choice when you went into the studio. The people who the producers who weren't very experienced would give you the script beforehand, so that you could read it or learn it. Or if you got the script 2 days beforehand, you couldn't learn it. There wasn't time. It takes a long time to learn a script, even if you have a sort of wizard memory. And my memory is not as good as it was, but it would still take me an afternoon to learn a page. So if you've got 20 pages, that's 10 days work, and you have a choice. Either you do it first reading and then correct, or you go off and you learn it and you keep learning it until it becomes real again. And it's one of the problems with writing something and then performing it, that you remember writing it and you never quite get to that point of making it real, making it as real as it was when you wrote it. When you write it, you can hear the sounds in your head. They're real. That's why it's so good as a writer to give that work to somebody else, because they will make it real again. And it's really hard to recover that reality, that spontaneity. So what you've got with reality TV is you're put in a position where you're going to say things which probably will be what is scripted, which probably will be what is written down. I'm sure it's written down. And they just wait for you to say what they've got on their paper in front of them. They don't even need to, they just tick it off. They don't even need to prompt you most of the time, providing the environment is right. There's very few things, you can't deviate that much. And if they've got someone like me, they've got a little bit more of a challenge, because I'm likely to go off on one. But I will eventually come back. They just have to wait. And I would eventually say what I'm supposed to say, I think. And they've just got to make sure that their cameras are ready. They've got 8 cameras hanging around the place. I mean, they're going to catch it. And in this case, there's sort of, it's not even the danger that you've got in Big Brother, where you've got real people facing each other, and you've got that possibility. You know, how do you control two people? You've only got to control one person, because all that relationship is done through a screen that they're already monitoring.
Yeah.
And I had some difficulty when I started dictating things in different languages. I was very naughty, I'm afraid.
I know, but that's you being you.
Yeah, and I put up a different pun every day for Bay, and above the cooker I put up different lyrics in different languages. And, you know, I even tried sort of Greeklish. I even tried lyrics in Greek and Albanian and Turkish and French, Latin. And some people noticed them, and I thought, oh, that's really nice. In fact, the fellow who invented the show noticed. I put up a bit of Latin philosophy from Anselm from the 11th century. Id quo nihil maius cogitare potest, which is the definition of God, above my cooker in a reality TV show. I thought, you know, yeah. So it worked. It worked. I'm really proud of what of being involved in that. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend anyone else does it. Because the aftermath is horrific.
Yeah. Would you say it's more? Would you say it's more damaging?
Oh, it's completely catastrophic. If you if you go back to this image about how to get a performance out of somebody. So if you're trusting your editors and your producers and your directors, that you're going to be put in a situation where you're going to say the words they want you to say, great, and you say them, and you create this drama, and it's beautifully edited. And, you know, I can never fault the editing in the show at any point. It's and they did me proud. But it is a drama. And if you're using, you know, we're going out in primetime television slot.
Yeah.
And yet we're being paid. We're being paid a displacement fee. We're being paid less than expenses. We're being paid less than you would be paid if you were an extra.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we were being paid the amount you'd get if you were doing jury service, but it was something like that, you know. And you're being told this is a great adventure, you could win, or all that sort of rubbish. No. If we were performing main primetime television drama, which is what we were doing, then we should have been paid as professional performers.
Yeah.
Which means I should have taken home £30,000. Oh my goodness, I did. So I was the only person really there who was paid professionally.
Yeah.
And yet it was presented as a prize. And you know, I couldn't get out of the production company any information about whether or not it was being taxed as such. I didn't find out until 2 days before I had to submit my tax. Even my accountant didn't know. You know, so it came as a bit of a shock. But it's just gauche and manipulative and wrong that people who perform are not paid properly. You don't expect to get a taxi somewhere and to pay the taxi the cost of petrol. You pay the taxi a professional fee. You say, well, but you've got the pleasure of my scintillating company. No, you pay. And I think it's wrong. I think it's morally wrong not to pay, first of all. Secondly, I think if somebody's going to do one of these shows, they should have an agent, a theatrical agent, before they go in. They should have that professional support. Yeah. And I think they should have union representation. There is none. So you don't fall under Bectu because you're not a technician.
Equity?
You don't fall under equity. Now, this is down to a conversation that Simon Cowell had with equity in the early 2000s when he was doing his big shows. Simon Cowell's right-hand man is somebody I went to school with. He was the editor of the Sunday Express and got done for, he got done in the wake of the phone tapping scandal. We haven't really spoken. So he got fired from the Sunday Express and was immediately picked up by Simon Cowell. The links are all over the place. It's extraordinary. Simon Cowell had a conversation with Equity. I know about this. I've spoken to Equity. And he said, well, these people are not performing as anybody else. They're performing as themselves. But he gives away the game at that point by using the word performing. The verb is there. And Equity was set up. It was one of the last things to come out of the old music hall. So the music halls gave us a lot of the laws that are in place about theatre safety around the world. You know, that during a show, you see the safety curtain descend, that the seats are bolted into the floor, that you don't have pub food and pub drink being sold in the auditorium, that you have loos available in the building. These are all laws that came in because of the popularity of the music halls, and the last one was a union that would represent variety artists, and it's gone on to be rather grand. And to be representing people who've been trained by RADA and stuff, and so if you go through a theatrical training, then you automatically get Equity membership. But if, like me, you've hobbled around all over the place, it's very difficult to. Can I prove that I was paid £500 for a performance? Well, I was, but I can't prove it because I don't think I got the same bank account anymore, and I've certainly not got a receipt. And the company that I was working for no longer exists. But hey, I've got national reviews, and that's not good enough. Or I've got international reviews. I've got and it's very difficult. It's very difficult to prove this sort of stuff. So Simon Cowell and Equity had this conversation, and Equity caved in. And I'm appalled. In almost every other sphere of life, you have a union who can represent you. In reality TV, there is nobody. And then I think now there's an Ofcom are monitoring a regulation which came out about in April, but it does nothing more than to confirm practice which was already in position when I did the Circle, which is that you'll be interviewed by a psychiatrist at various times. I know a lot of them. I taught one of them. One of the main ones who does all this sort of stuff was my student. He was in a class with a boy who's the producer of Four in a Bed. So he, when I was doing the Circle, he came rushing down into the office and says, "I know this man. He taught me religious studies." So it was quite nice to meet him when I came out. It's so the only requirement is that you have access to psychiatry after the show. I can't think of any other job where you would do where your golden handshake is a card for a psychiatrist. Are we saying that you don't vet your participants well enough before they go in the show, so they're all lunatics? Or are we saying that the experience of being on the show is so ghastly that you need psychiatry afterwards? No. What you need is professionalism. And we can take another example. Sorry, I hope I'm waffling on too much. But another example would be, and if you take the musical My Fair Lady, or you can go back to George Bernard Shaw. I remember Joan Greenwood saying to me, she was this wonderful actress from the 1950s, She'd been cast in St. Joan, of all plays. And she wrote to George Bernard Shaw because he was still alive at the time. And he said, do you have any advice about how I should play this part? Because she had this wonderful sort of sultry voice. And he just wrote back, say the words. And, George Bernard Shaw was very direct. And if you look at Pygmalion, and if you look at My Fair Lady, the same line is in both. And after, so Eliza's plucked up out of the gutter. And for a joke, she is transformed. She is made to change from being a flower girl to being a duchess for a joke. And it works. And that's not where the play stops. That's where you would expect the play to stop, the Cinderella moment. But it goes beyond that. And she then says to Higgins, what's to become of me? What's to become of me? She says it twice, and it's in both versions of the play. And he says, well, you could always marry Freddie Ainsworth Hill. And she says, I was better than that when I was a flower girl. I sold flowers. I didn't sell myself. And that I think is the heart of the play, and the heart of My Fair Lady, actually. There is Higgins, for his joke, he hasn't set out a roadmap for what he's going to do with this girl who has transitioned from one world to another, from one life to another. And that's what happened. That's what happens when you go through this sort of extended television experience. You transition from one life to another, and there is no roadmap, and you feel lost, abandoned, and you feel used. In some cases, you really are used and manipulated. It doesn't matter whether you win. You win that silly money, because it is just silly money. They would pay that money to their special guests. Richard Mabley, I'm sure, had far more than that to appear on the show, as indeed did the model, I'm sure, who was up against Jan. If you believe that was genuine, I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't.
Like I said, my perception is I'm always looking at it from the third eye anyway. I don't look at it. Yeah, I don't look at it in a reality sense. I look at it from the psychological element. I see it from that point of view, and I have a laugh. Don't get me wrong, I do laugh, but I think psychologically, is that right? Is that wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. But
that's my common question and answer every time I've seen an episode. At the end, I'm thinking, is that right? Is that?
But a lot of the time, the decisions which you make are not really. You've not really made those decisions. You've been sort of catapulted into them.
Yeah, and you're pushed into it so much, and then I can understand the psychiatrist, help afterwards, because you've been pushed so much by certain people to be that.
It takes you over 6 months to recover from the experience of being locked away in that environment. It takes you over 6 months. I came out, I was garrulous. I was telling my life story to anybody on the street. I had no filter. And I was put in a hotel quite a lot for the next few months, for various reasons. And I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and start singing musicals at top volume. And there were complaints. But that's what I did in the circle. Our time was all over the place. Sometimes we were working at 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd had our watches and our phones and things confiscated.
Yeah, so you had no concept of time.
We had no concept of time, but we were... tricks were played on us to make us more compliant. These tricks are documented. There's a form of military training which was developed in Britain and in Israel called R21, which is designed to train people to withstand torture. and you're put in stress situations. That means overheated, strange colours around you, noise, light all the time, no way of telling what time it is. Oh my goodness, it all sounds like the circle. But it's not just the circle. Big Brother does the same thing. They actually engage designers who are sort of knowledgeable about shui, and they're told, design a room which is going to make somebody nervous, or design a room which is going to make somebody comfortable. In my case, I was perfectly happy, actually. I mean, I knew there were these Zangi paintings on the wall. They'd asked me if I wanted to bring my own pictures, and I said, yes, I will. And I did, and they wouldn't let me put them up. But did I mind those Zangi pictures? No. I mean, I thought, it's all been designed by somebody who was designing camouflage in the First World War. But equally, they could have been designing my socks. And I live with this Zangi colour day and night. So it doesn't matter. It has no effect on me.
And that became your little bubble.
But the other stuff has a big effect on you. And knowing that someone is controlling your life and you surrender to that. And in the end, you become very compliant. You do whatever they tell you to do. And now, how do I know about this? You think, why is he investigating torture technique? And it's because my partner was a torture victim. And I took his case through the European Court of Human Rights. We won. It took 11 years. But it meant I researched the phenomenon. And when I came back into the real world and I was talking to him, and he was saying, well, yeah, that happened to me. And I was thinking, this is right. This is all the things you were describing. And this is why it was so difficult for me to get from you how many days you were in a cage in the open sun. How many days were you there? Because day and night disappear very quickly. They go within about a day. And I had to think really hard when I was in the circle about what day it was. And I didn't really know. And I miscalculated. By the time we got to the end, I was surprised we'd got to the end. I was surprised and sort of relieved, but I was surprised, yeah.
So the awareness is totally gone out the window, concept of times. Yeah. Another concept of thing I'm asking as well now, people see it as this corridor or a lift in this case. Was there anyone on your level, do you think?
What do you mean?
In those rooms, was there people on the same level as you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think there were three certainly two of us on each floor. I have no idea. Woody had a very careful plan of everybody, and he knew where people were. So did Ella. I had no idea, and I don't think I was really very interested.
Because I noticed that in the first season, people were trying to gauge, is that someone above me, is that someone beside me,
that would have been a conversation for somebody else. I just had no interest.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not terribly good at work. I've lived here in Rugby for 5 years now, and I'm still not quite sure which side of Rugby I am. I mean, I don't know.
The London side or the Midland side?
I have no idea. I really have no idea. And I don't drive, so I don't really need to use this idea of sort of direction. I'm just not very. It's not that I'm not very good at it. I can orient it. Orientation is okay. My sense of orientation is there, but I'm just not terribly interested.
Yeah.
And I sort of switch that off.
And I think with my, mind thinking psychologically, I think that was just a way of trying to make people think that as well. So that's why I tended not to think of that.
Yeah. I was very concerned. I was very obedient. I didn't go too near the window. I didn't want to break the game. I was very obedient. I was terribly concerned about Bay. And in the end, I had so many air conditioners it was like living in a factory. It was so noisy. And they were able to do this wonderful thing with sound, which has been explained to me in the past by sound engineers. You record the place with all the sound on, and you take the individual out of that environment, which they did. They took me up to the roof every so often, and then you sort of layer that sound onto the sound with me speaking, and it would take all the extraneous heat and noise out. So all the extraneous air conditioning noise out. So you never heard the air conditioners. I did. There was a nightmare. I hardly had any sleep.
With the edit,
but that's ordinary life anyway.
Yeah, with the edit, obviously they made it so clever, but I knew there were certain elements that was hidden, but obviously with the clever editing, you couldn't actually physically show it because it's like shouting over the top of, like you said, industrial stuff.
Yeah.
So I was aware of it, but
I think in some cases they asked people to switch their air conditioners off, but in most cases, in most rooms, we only had one air conditioner. I had about 16, I think, by the time I left, because of Bay. And so I'm really grateful on many levels that I took Bay into the show, but it disturbed the relationship that I have with my older cat.
Yeah.
And it sort of really distorted that relationship I have with Bay. Bay was very comfortable being second cat until I came out of the circle. And then there was a long period where he was fighting for attention. And the older cat was just confused. What's happened? He's come back. He's mine. Why is he giving attention to that brat? So I always think of Bay as being a sort of version of Prince Harry anyway. They're both ginger and much loved.
Wow.
They get a bad press.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Misconception.
Yeah. If you knew them, you'd love them.
Yeah. And if you don't, you don't.
And if you don't, you should really. Everybody should have a Bay in their life.
That's what I like as well. And I said that to my wife. I said, it's like a cat. A cat, it's always understanding. And I know my wife's sister-in-law's got a dog, but they seem to know. But at the same time, cats are more intuitive because cats are more needy than a dog, I think, in my opinion, anyway.
Maybe I don't know. I was brought up with dogs. Dogs are fairly needy too. They need walking. You have animals. That's your responsibility.
Yeah.
I think even more so than people. But I think you have responsibility to people too. And it comes down to the circle as well. If you take somebody and you put them through this experience, they're your responsibility. Tim is not just for Christmas. Woof woof.
Tim's for life.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you either have all the professional machinery to make sure that somebody has support, or you take that responsibility. And certainly the professional machinery is not there, and it's not been there for years. It's an unregulated form of television, and it's heinous, with huge power, mounting power, because reality television is forming a major core of our television diet.
Yeah,
and its link with social media is huge as well. What's to become of somebody who does a television show? Well, actually, the answer is very simple. You do ASOS adverts on YouTube, on Instagram, and you sell bikinis, or you market yourself on OnlyFans and you do cheap porn. Well, I just don't think I would fare very well in either of those capacities.
So, last of all,
sorry.
Do you think
I've not really allowed you
No.
to ask any questions at all, have I? I've been such a bad interviewee.
No, I like it because
Okay.
it's you being you, and that's why I'm leaving it unedited. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it.
All the chaos of Tim. Yeah, go on.
I'm going to leave it unedited. I'm going to leave it. But going back to this one, it's going back to the circle. Do you think over the last 2 years it's going to make it worse this year?
What do you mean, the circle?
Yeah. Do you think the production's got more wiser? Do you think they took note of what's been said to them? Do you think it's going to be?
No, I don't think so. I think the production of Series 3 is going to change. I think it's going to be much more aggressive. I think that's the way the production is going. I just think that, Tim Harcourt, who invented the show, I knew the house he lived in when he was in Oxford. One of my students was there, and we did an opera together. So I was regularly in and out of his house. But I don't remember him, and he doesn't remember me. And it's very strange because he was doing classics, he was doing Latin and Greek. So I would have spoken to him because I'm always excited when someone's doing a real subject. There's not very many people who do Latin and Greek. Though he did try speaking to me in Greek, and his Greek wasn't very good. But then he was trying to use a strange sort of Erasmian pronunciation, which I rather despise. Anyway, Tim Harcourt has invented a number of shows. One of them is The Circle, another one is The Race Around the World. And I think in their initial concept, they're both charming shows. And what we need is production to do more of this invention of the charming, whimsical shows. They'll always descend into competitiveness and aggression. That's what the nature of the beast is. But as long as there's people like Tim Harcourt out there producing whimsy and charm and friendliness, then I have hope. We need more of that. We need more of the whimsy. And we need more programs on television which tell you that actually money isn't everything. And that's why I think we need to find different things to this sort of jackpot obsession. It's not the be all and end all. The chase, I still haven't worked out what that's about. But people just assume that because I've done this, I would want to do some of these other things. I just have no interest. And what I have been offered, I haven't been able to do. I haven't been allowed to do. So I've been sort of stuck. It's very difficult because people see. I thought people saw me, but I think they saw a very special edition of me, which is fine. They're welcome to that. So, the me has a lot more layers. I think, and I love politics. I love art. I love all forms of culture. I love meeting new people. I hate traveling. My ideal of travel would be to leap into a TARDIS and open the door at some new place. I just don't like that journey. And I only go somewhere new, so I meet people with a different background. I'm not really interested in the architecture. Though you walk around my house. I've got pictures of architecture like mad. I sit and draw architecture in different places. Then it becomes interesting to me because it becomes a sort of something I want to analyze. But as such, I mean, it's not top of my list. Top of my list is meeting street children from Napoli, or working out where to buy cheddar cheese. Ohio does very good cheddar cheese, of course, as you know.
And Wisconsin does good.
Wisconsin is the home of cheddar cheese. Yep. Not terribly strong in Wisconsin, though.
No, it's very mellow and
it's very mellow. I think we prefer it with a little bit of a kick. Extra mature is the real ideal, and some wonderful stuff in Warwickshire, which is why I live in Rugby. But when I go to Russia, where I teach, I find I had to jam bottles of Ribena and strong cheddar into my bag. I remember once my bag got lost in customs or whatever it was. About 2 days later, I went back to get it, and of course, the cheese by that point was really high. I could smell it as I walked into the airport.
Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, that's mine. They weren't very impressed, actually. But yeah, I don't know how I would ever go to Australia or New Zealand, where you're not allowed to take these things. Actually, you're not allowed to take them into Europe now, so it's going to make going to Italy very difficult in future. But I don't mind local cuisine. I just want to know that I can have a nibble of some strong cheddar on the way back.
Strong, proper cheddar.
Yeah. None of this plastic stuff. I mean, in Russian supermarkets, when I run out of my own cheddar, I do find I have to go and sort of get some of this cheddar. Cheddar. That's it. It just looks like a piece of plastic. Horrible. And then I survive on marzipan. But yeah, needs must. But I it's just I have a vision of myself as very different to what I think they think, oh yeah, you've now got a career in reality TV. I don't think so. And I would want to see myself doing theatre again. To be in front of cameras was just wonderful. I felt at home, and I thought, wow, this is a life I never thought of, and yet it's one in a way I've sort of prepared for, and I could do that. And I had thought, my life with the performing arts was as a director or designer, but maybe I need to rethink and think, well, actually, I should reevaluate my life as a performer. And I have no problem with directing again, but it was great fun performing.
It's like I knew a lady, she's sadly not with us anymore, and she was on stage and she's performed on TV. And then she, did radio for the community radio station I was working, volunteering for in Cornwall.
Yes.
And in the year before I left England altogether, I was as you would call it, producer. But every time I was in her presence, I felt honoured to be with her because of her charisma, because of how she was.
Yes.
And she said, just be you, and that's what people will like about you.
But being you is very difficult. It's something you have to learn.
I said to her, because I have done performing arts, so I've done things like that. I said, yes, but how I look at it, can I do it any better than how I would have done it 5 years ago? Could I have done better than I would have done 5 minutes ago? And she said,
you could do different.
Yeah.
And
I just felt overt, and she was the last voice I spoke to on the mobile phone before I left England. I said, it's not goodbye, it's see you soon, because I didn't want to say bye to her. And sadly, she died last year. But the fact is,
I'm so sorry.
But she was a good friend.
Yeah.
I didn't see her as a presenter. I didn't see her as an actress. I didn't see her part of equity. I didn't see her. I just saw her as her.
But she was charismatic.
Yeah. And she loved the theatre. She loved the musicals. She was a person. She rebelled against certain things that was said to her. For example, when she used to do a show on a Friday, it had to be set music. And she said, why do I have to play set music when I've got my own music?
Ah, yes.
And I'm thinking, well, it's the rule that has been set by management. And she said, I don't want that. I said, yeah, but it's what you got to do. But she always came in every Friday. She had a memory stick full of music, of musicals or whatever she liked. And she said, I am playing music that they want. And I said, not the style they want. So she had to put
that's tough. That's tough for her.
So, and this is what really, in a sense, I think damaged her in this way, and I'm saying that in the nicest way. They asked her to move to a Sunday. And they said, you got Sunday, you got 3 hours on a Sunday. You can be free to do what you want. You can play whatever you want.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's why I helped her in the final year before I left. Because
and was she happy doing that?
As long as I was helping her, yes.
Yeah. You see, you can't be the best you can be without support. And I was very much aware in the circle of the multitude of support that was behind me. And why would you question that? This is the point. Why would you question that? The people who did question the support, the people who tried to go against the sort of the position that I think was defined for them, had a tough time.
Yeah,
they really had a tough time, they got very little airtime as well, because they weren't doing what they wanted. Now, I think when I was cast, I think my partner tells me that I was the John Sargent of the circle. I was the old fart who people would like, who would go out fairly soon. And I think once they got me into the flat, they realised I had potential, and I would throw myself into anything. You know, I was sort of Larry Grayson of the circle, and it would always go slightly wrong, or it would always be slightly entertaining. And Tim Harcourt got hold of this Alpine horn, and I remember him saying to me after that he thought that was the best £4,000 he'd ever spent on a prop, and it came with its manager. I mean, you know, it came with somebody who monitored it at all times. But they left it in my flat overnight, and I blew it again in the morning. And it was great fun. I was really proud to have got a note out of it. It was a note that sounded very much like sort of disturbing flatulence, but you know, IBS sponsored by the circle. But you know,
well, one of my highlights, and I'll say my story as well, because I don't mind sharing my story. I was doing an outside phone call into the studio.
Oh, yes.
When the Queen and the Prince Philip came to Cornwall.
No.
Yes.
And they went to the studio.
No, they didn't go to the studio, but I managed to get. I saw the train come in, because obviously Penzance is the last train station in UK.
Yes.
And I was with this presenter at the time, and he was 16, I think, 16, 17. I was like 24, 25.
And you were able to do the phone call and say, she's now getting out of the train. The Royal Train?
Yes, the Royal Train.
The Royal Train. No. How wonderful.
And
did you manage to get the colour of her dress?
It was green.
Yeah, you did. You did emerald green or lime green. Yeah,
it was emerald green.
Did you get notes about her dress before you started? Or no? Oh my God, that's good of you.
We didn't even know she was coming to Penzance, you know, or even the Isles of Scilly that day. We just heard about it as soon as we got into the office. Did you know the Queen's in Penzance in the next 10 minutes?
Go off. Yeah, right.
So
it's always exciting when she appears somewhere. I mean, I remember once or twice when she turned up in Oxford, and it never ceases to be uplifting.
So this is this story, and then I'll tell you another story about it.
I look forward to it.
The fact was, this 17-year-old was next to me. He was like, "We're not going to see the Queen, are we?" I said, "Yes, we are. Follow me." So he was not my junior. He was there before me at that radio, so I was still fairly new. But he was like a few months advanced than I was. But I said, "Follow me." So he followed me, and I said, "Right, watch what I'm going to do." And I spoke to, I think it was the BBC. I said, "Look, I haven't got ID, but we are from such and such radio station. Can you let us in?" Yeah, come on. So they got us in the press enclosure, which was more perfect. And no ID. We're still an online-based radio station, not FM or AM or anything, just online. And I was on the phone, and I was like, "The Queen's coming off the train now. Here is," and I passed it on to the other person. So he had to turn. So I was doing that sort of way of where it was
so good.
And then And then the most memorable moment of this, when the Queen was coming by me, I said, the Queen is within sneezing distance of me. And I'm like, when I was told afterwards, I'm like, oh my.
Still very good. It's a nice line. You should be really proud of it.
Yes, I do.
She's quite small, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
But that's not the first time I met the Queen.
Really?
The first time I met her was when I was 15.
Yes.
And I was invited to Queen's reception when I was 15 at school. I was not allowed to tell anyone, like no one was to tell anything about the circle.
Yes.
I was told, right, get your best clothes, you're going to London. That's all we can tell you for the moment. But don't tell anyone you're going to London. Okay.
Yeah. So you went by train?
So I went by train with the person so I went with whoever it was, my teacher, I think it was.
Yes.
And they still didn't tell me. They said, right, you're on the train now. Just before we get to London, make sure you get dressed. Well, I said, okay. Still thought nothing of it. Got to Paddington.
Yeah.
Nothing of it. Right, we're going to go in this black taxi. I said, okay. So we got in the black taxi, black cab.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we went a short distance. We didn't get far. And they said, right, we're now going to transfer to this car. Still no markings or anything. So I was unaware of what was going on. I was thinking, what are we doing in London? I'm dressed up like this. I got in the car. Then the next thing we was going along the Mile. Up to the palace. And I'm thinking, why are we going up to the gates? And the gates are opening for me.
No.
Yeah, and I said that out loud.
So she shook hands with you? She shook hands with you?
So I got in through the palace. Got out of the car, the side door.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And they said, right, come through here. Your teacher will be here as well. Right, do this, do that, but don't tell her this, don't do that, do the protocol way, don't do it. And when she asks you a question, you will answer this and you answer that. And I said, who am I going to talk to? No, I still don't know either, because I was thinking, what am I on about? I was thinking, clicking on it was the Queen. And they opened the door, and then there was this meal, and I was with the Queen and having a meal and talking to her. And
how brilliant is that?
But I was told not to say what I saw in front, in the room. I was told, the Queen.
But you were in that room with the secret panel where she comes out of the secret panel of the mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah. How brilliant.
So
how brilliant.
So the point was, and even after I met her, I was told, "Right, David, you're going back now. We're not telling anyone about it until such date," because it's and I knew the word embargo at the time. That's the first time I heard the word. And I was thinking, you'll be embargoed. And if you get told that you tell anyone, we will just own the subject. It won't be announced, you will just have it in your memories.
Yes.
So I had to keep quiet. And then the Queen came out. She said, how do you do? What's your name? And I said, yes, Mum, my name's Dave.
Where are you from?
Yeah, where are you from? And I said,
oh, how lovely.
And I said, Cornwall. Mum.
Oh, I know Cornwall.
And she said, oh, Cornwall.
Yes, very nice, very nice.
And
you've come a long way.
And it's just the fact that I was in a prison and I wasn't tall myself at the time.
Yeah.
And she was the same height as me.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And I was thinking, is that the Queen?
Yeah.
Yeah. And my wife's awake now.
Oh my goodness. Am I going to say hello? We probably actually need to stop, I'm afraid, unfortunately.
Yes, I'm just juggling things here.
There we are.
But so the fact is, the Queen, I still can believe it to that day. I was like, the Queen. And the only reason I met her is because Prince Charles started the charity, the Prince's Trust, that year.
Absolutely.
So.
Yes. And so you were a recipient of one of the Prince's Trust.
Yeah.
Things. Yeah. Very good.
Because I got the silver award. And
did you really?
Yeah. And I was only 15.
How brilliant! How brilliant! What did you do for it?
I did loads of key skill work, like working with others. I had to do like 30 different challenges in the space of 2 years.
Yeah.
And it had to be varying hours. It couldn't be just 4 hours or 30 hours in one go. It had to be 4 hours on one thing, 2 hours on another, 1 hour on another thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
How wonderful! I'm really impressed.
And and another fact, my late nan used to have her mum, which is my great nan. She used to have tea with the Queen Mum.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! How did she manage that?
She knew people in the know.
Yeah. Well, that would have been quite a thing.
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to stop any second. So so here we are.
Last summary: if anyone was to follow your journey, would you recommend it or not?
On the circle.
No, apart from
any part of my life. Oh yeah. It's, just keep plodding on, and don't take no for an answer.
Unless it's reality TV.
Oh no, even reality TV. If opportunity is not a lengthy visitor, so if opportunity comes knocking, you take it. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. But the thing is, you're never going to get anything good unless you are prepared to accept some things which are perhaps not that desirable. But it's just you never know what is round the corner. Some people call it fate. Some people, I would call it providence. That you got. There is opportunity, and in the end, it sort of works out okay. But sometimes it's a bit dodgy on the way.
And now this is me going formal because I like to say it formally. Professor Tim Wilson, thank you for being part of the journey.
Thank you very much for taking me along with you for a short way. So
and thank you, and I'll make sure you get the links and you can share it if you want with your channels. And
where do you put this?
Well, this will be YouTube, the video,
okay.
The visual, and the podcast will be on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify.
All right, yeah. I've still not quite got my head around podcasting. Every so often, I think I should try it, but I do a lot of podcasts with other people.
Well, you do the official podcast, which is good enough. That's my opinion. You don't have to be behind a mic, talking into a mic where no one can see you. Being in front of a camera is what I think key to do.
Good. And how long have you been doing this?
Well, I've started doing the podcasting in the last year, but I've progressively got better and better over the last few months.
And do you think? I now remember we're supposed to talk about a journey. I don't think I've really talked very much about a journey, but do you think we've
your journey's as it is.
All right. Okay.
And that's
because we didn't talk about the other things like being a monk and all this sort of being a goat herder, but I'm sure there's an opportunity to come back at a later time. So if you want me back, give me a call. We'll do the bits we've missed out completely. And I'm sure we can find something else to talk about.
Well, thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much. And I'll tell you about going down to Cornwall. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Have fun. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tim. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Be part of the journey by sharing your journey. Email wisewords1983@outlook.com. Until next time, bye-bye from me. And David, do you want to say bye?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Now, if you like to be inspired further by quotes, by blogs, by videos, there is a Facebook page, I believe, that they can go and like. Isn't there, Marcus?
# share a wise word or two. Follow us on Facebook. www.facebook.com/shareawiseword or two. Be sure to like, subscribe and listen to another journey coming soon.